Hello all! So today I wanted to make a little video about what must be one of my most favourite shoes of 2022, and that is the Asics Novablast 3 TRs. Now, I got the Novablast 3s when they initially launched, and since then I've racked up about 450 kilometers in them, and I've done all sorts of types of running in them. I've done my daily running, I've done some park runs, I've done some light speed sessions, and then to truly put them to the test I have even done a 100-mile ultra marathon in them, and it's given me a good gist of what these shoes are capable of. Okay, so to start with, let's just go over some facts and figures and also discuss what some of the differences are between this TR variant and the standard Novablast 3. So let's start with weight. So let me just grab my kitchen scales. So we put them on there. So they are weighing in my size 10.5 UK at 295 grams. So they are quite light, not life-changing, but definitely noticeably light. Okay, so moving on to the midsole. So here Asics have used what they call their Flight Foam Blast Plus, and both the Asics Novablast 3 and the TR version, they share the same midsole. Some of the benefits of this foam, firstly, is the cushioning. As you can see, there's quite a lot of foam there, with a stack height of 31mm at the rear, 23mm at the front, so total of 8mm drop on this shoe. But as well as being cushioned, it's also quite bouncy, so you really do get this feeling of kind of bouncy forward propulsion, almost like it's a carbon plated shoe, but it isn't. There's no plate in there. It bends really easily, but somehow they've managed to create some sort of a magic foam which is really cushioned, protects the legs, but at the same time you can do some light speed sessions in it because it's quite responsive as well. And before I forget, moving on to cost. In the UK, both variants of the Asics Novablast 3, both the standard version and the TR variant, both come in at £135, and they come in a variety of different colourways. Moving on to the differences. So really, the big difference between the standard Novablast 3 and then the TR variant is the outsole. So as you can see on this, which is the TR variant, there are some very small lugs. I don't have the standard version on hand, but I'll put a picture up here somewhere. And on the standard version, it's basically just a smooth outsole on the bottom, which the benefits are it shaves about 20 to 30 grams off this TR variant. However, people have criticised the lack of grip on it in any sort of adverse weather. So if you're doing any sort of winter running or any sort of light off-roading, this TR variant will probably make up for that extra weight by giving you that extra grip and confidence which you need in those conditions. Now that we've gone over the differences between the standard Asics Novablast 3 and then the TRs, I'd like to talk about what I liked and what I disliked about this shoe, what makes it great and what niggles it might have. Okay, so my first like, and that for me is the upper. I really like this upper. So a bit of backstory, I've got quite wide feet and I often struggle in a lot of shoes with space in the toe box. For my longer runs I often get blisters. However, even when I was doing my 100-mile ultra marathon in these, the amount of blisters I actually got at the end of it was quite minimal, which for me is quite a miracle. So as you can see, there's quite a lot of space in the toe box, and the actual toe box isn't too tapered as you see in some other shoes. Nike, I'm looking at you. And also, as well as that, the actual material has a bit of give to it, not too much, but it's enough for me. And as well as the space in the toe box, there is quite a good lockdown. I quite like the lacing and tongue on this, so it holds my forefoot quite well, and it also locks my heel in, so my foot is quite secure. Okay, so moving on to my second like, and that for me is this midsole. So I mentioned before that Asics used their Flight Foam Blast Plus midsole in this shoe, and with a lot of cushioned shoes you sometimes step in them and they are really cushioned, but when you actually go for a run, once you start running, your feet sort of sink into them, and the shoe doesn't actually give you much back aside from protecting your legs. So in most cushion shoes you wouldn't want to do any sort of speed sessions or anything like that. But stepping into the Novablast 3, Asics have somehow created this foam which is magic. It's really lightweight, it's really cushioned, but it also gives you a lot of energy return when you want to do those faster sessions as well. So it's really a do-it-all shoe. Moving on to my third like, and that for me is the looks of this shoe. Now I know looks are subjective, but I really like the styling that Asics have used on this shoe. It just looks really modern. It's almost quite angular in appearance. I really like this grey, black and red colourway. Although to be honest, I mostly got this colour because I've got a few other shoes that are in similar colourways, and I didn't want my partner to find out that I've yet again brought more running shoes which I probably don't need. Although, spoiler alert, she noticed. Okay, so coming up to my fourth positive point and my last, and that for me is the value. Now at £135 you can't exactly call this shoe cheap. However, it's a shoe that will literally do everything you need. So if you're the type of person who only wants one shoe in their running rotation, this will basically cover a lot of bases. You can do some light speed sessions in it, you can go on some trails with it, although nothing too heavy. You can use it on the road, and it's probably light enough as well that you could probably attempt to do some races in it if you don't want to go out and buy sort of a all-out carbon plated race shoe. Okay, so those were what I liked about the Asics Novablast 3. Now moving on to my dislikes. There aren't many things I don't like about this shoe, however I don't think it's perfect, and there are some niggles which I'd like to discuss. My first dislike, and that for me is the stability of this shoe. It's kind of a personal thing, but I suffer from some mild overpronation, and I know not all of you will have that. But for me at least, the stack height combined with the rather soft foam, it means that my foot tends to roll in a bit if I don't focus on my running form. So towards the end of long runs or in any of my longer races, I sometimes notice that my knee starts hurting a little bit, just because my running form's a bit off, and this shoe isn't the most stable shoe out there. However, if you do suffer from some stability issues, it's probably something to look out for. This shoe is marketed as a neutral shoe, so if you do overpronate, you probably want to be a bit careful with it, especially when you're kind of tired into those long runs and maybe your running form isn't the best. Although saying that, it isn't the most stable shoe, but it's definitely not a dramatically unstable shoe. Not something like the Nike Invincible 2s with the Zoom X. These are some real ankle breakers if you've got bad running form. Okay, so moving on to my second niggle with this shoe, and that for me is the grip. Now, you can look at this in one of two ways. If you're coming from the point of view that it's a road shoe with a bit of extra grip, then I guess the grip is quite good. The outsole will provide some decent grip on wet tarmac. However, if you are going to use this shoe as a trail shoe, it'll be okay for any sort of hard packed trails, tow paths, dry fields, stuff like that. But if you are looking to tackle any more technical terrain like mountain running, sand, or any sort of deep mud, then the lugs on the bottom of this shoe are not really going to be deep enough or grippy enough for that. So you'd probably want to get a more specific trail shoe with deeper lugs that is made for that sort of terrain. Okay, so moving on to my last dislike, and that for me is the protection. If you look at a lot of trail shoes, there's usually some sort of protection around the toes, and then a rock plate, so any sort of more pointy rocks don't go through into the bottom of your foot. So if you look at something like these Topo shoes which I have here, there's some harder material in the toe box, and then there's also, you can't see it here, but there's also a rock plate underneath this outsole which will stop any rocks from coming up and damaging or hurting your foot. And as you can see here on the Asics Novablast 3TRs, it's really just the same upper that you get on the standard Asics Novablast 3s. There's no any extra added protection there, and again that's probably just a trade-off to save weight. Okay, so who do I think these shoes are for? I guess there's a number of scenarios. I guess you get the person who just wants one shoe that will do a bit of everything. Maybe you've got a bit of a road run and then you want to go onto a tow path, maybe a park, something like that. So these would be perfect for somebody who maybe doesn't want to remortgage their house and buy 4 shoes for their running rotation, and they just want one shoe that will do a bit of everything. So you've got the lightness, the cushioning for your long runs, you've got the responsiveness for some of your faster runs, and then you've got that extra grip on the bottom as well, which will mean that you can tackle some different terrains, not only tarmac. And I guess lastly, this is what I would use these shoes for, is I think they make quite a good shoe for ultra races. Previously I've been running in more specific trail shoes, although really it's a bit overkill for me, as a lot of the races I've done have been on hard packed trails in the summer or along tow paths, so really the grip which the Asics Novablast 3TRs provide has been sufficient for me, aside from in really boggy, muddy conditions, but for a lot of my races it's been good enough. And what I get with this shoe is the extra amount of lightness, under 300 grams, great cushioning and responsiveness as well. So I found they've really been good in that sort of situation. Okay, and finally, I'd like to mention some alternatives to this shoe if for whatever reason you don't want to pick this shoe. There are some alternatives, not all of them I have with me, so any shoes I don't have I'll just stick a picture up. So firstly there's the Nike Pegasus Trail Frees, which are more of a specific trail shoe. I guess they're in that road to trail category. They will however be a bit heavier than Asics Novablast 3TRs, but they will have a bit more protection. There's a bit more protection around the toe box. And then I guess secondly, I mentioned these shoes before, but there's the Nike Invincible runs. They're very cushioned. They're not really a trail shoe at all. There's no lugs on the bottom. However, I found that this outsole is quite grippy in a lot of conditions. If you're just using it on tow paths or wet tarmac, it'll be fine for that, or any sort of dry trails that aren't too technical. And then there's also the Hoka Challenger ATRs here, which again are a more specific trail shoe. They're quite light. There's a bit of toe box protection here, and I believe they've got a rock plate in them. Not too sure about that. I'll have to double check that. I'll put it on the screen. But these I found haven't been as cushioned as the Asics, so it's a bit of a trade-off there. So those are just some alternatives I thought I should mention, and ultimately the choice is down to you.